Hello BookTube, this is my Pride TBR. I've broken down the ambitious number of books into three categories. A rather small general fiction, a much larger science fiction and fantasy, because that is still most of what I have in my collection, and an even smaller history section, which is one that I need to work on, and I'll talk about that when I get to the two history books, or the history book and I'm thinking it's more of a memoir. But anyway, let's get started. So, first up is Absolute Beginners by Colin MacInnes. So I first learned about Absolute Beginners. Well, first I guess I would talk about a bit about the story itself. So Absolute Beginners is the story of a nameless narrator who's turning 19. And the novel takes place over basically 4 days in succeeding months. So one part of the story takes place in 1 day in 1 month, and then the next part another day the next month, and so on and so forth. And it deals with the narrator sort of coming to terms with and encountering a changing London. And I first became aware of Absolute Beginners through the 1986 musical adaptation, Absolute Beginners, starring or featuring David Bowie, who also sang the title song Absolute Beginners, which is one of my favorite songs. I love that song. And I've been wanting to read Absolute Beginners, the novel, for ages. I've tried it a few times and I haven't quite gotten on with it, but hopefully this will be the time that I finally read Absolute Beginners. And so the novel is part of what's called the London Trilogy, which are a series of 3 standalone novels. So I have Absolute Beginners in this omnibus edition that collects all of the London novels, which include City of Spades, and Absolute Beginners, and Mr. Love and Justice. So I will try to get to, so I'm definitely aiming to get to Absolute Beginner sometime this coming month. Next up is Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jedrowski. This is a novel that takes place in 1980s Poland and features young men falling in love at a summer camp, I'm thinking. And next up is These Violent Delights by Micah Nemerever. This is a campus novel. It deals with 2 young men who are somewhere along their college career falling in love and basically becoming an updated version of Leopard and Lowell. I've heard some good things about Swimming in the Dark, but I don't know necessarily if These Violent Delights really made much of an impact, particularly on BookTube. So next up we have the science fiction and fantasy, which is going to be, again, the bulk of what I'm going to be talking about, because that's the bulk of my library. So first up is The Factory Witches of Lowell by C.S. Malerich. This is about the women who worked at the Lowell mills in the 19th century who also happened to be witches. Excuse me. Next up is Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon. This is a novel in which conquered people I think managed to begin a rebellion when an artist is tasked with creating a dragon for a festival and uses that to enact revenge. But I'm thinking that's what this is about. Not entirely sure. I'll get to this definitely sometime this month and be able to talk more about it. And I've been looking forward to reading Phoenix Extravagant. I've read Yoon Hawlee's Hexacate trilogy and loved it. So I'm pretty sure I will love Phoenix Extravagant as well. Next up will be Taste of Marrow by Sarah Gailey. I'll be reading it out of this American Hippo Omnibus edition or collection. It includes, so Taste of Marrow is the second novella in a sort of duology in which, called American Hippo, which the conceit is that in the 19th century, hippos were imported into the United States and settled along the Mississippi as a sort of beef substitute. And the hippos sort of wildly expanded, and pretty much the entirety of the Mississippi, or much of the Mississippi, is basically now hippo territory. And so the series began with River of Teeth, which I read a few years ago and quite liked it for the most part. And I've been looking forward to getting to Taste of Marrow ever since. So I will get to Taste of Marrow. And then there are 2 short stories attached in this collection, which I might not read, which are Worth Her Weight in Gold and 9.5. And Taste of Marrow is basically, I think, a direct sequel to River of Teeth, in which the main character and some of the surviving members of his crew seek to rescue his love interest who's been kidnapped. And next up is The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This is a new release that came out a few months ago, and it's about a soldier. So I'm not entirely sure what this is about. We'll find out sometime, or I'll find out sometime this month. But quite looking forward to it too. Well, I guess I could read the back and see. So, Touraine is a soldier, stolen as a child and raised to kill and die for the Empire. She owes loyalty to only her fellow conscripts. But now her company has been sent back to her homeland to stop a rebellion, and the ties of blood may be stronger than she thought. Luca needs a turncoat, someone desperate enough to tiptoe the bayonet's edge between treason and orders, someone who can sway the rebels toward peace, while Luca focuses on what really matters, getting her uncle off her throne. Through assassinations and massacres in bedrooms and war rooms, Touraine and Luca will haggle over the price of a nation. But some things aren't for sale. Next up is Docile by K.M. Szapara. This came out last year and is basically a dystopic near-future science fiction in which debt slavery is a thing, and in which our main character basically is forced to become a debt slave and begins a sex slave relationship with his owner. If you notice I'm not entirely sure about this book. I've heard mostly negative things about it, and that's kind of giving me pause, but I really should go ahead and read it and see what I make of it, and I will report back, definitely, one way or another. And then I have a White Trash Warlock by David R. Slayton. This is about a working class warlock who discovers that his family has been up to no good. Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to this. And next up is a Desolation called Peace by Arkady Martine. This is a sequel to a memory called Empire, and follows on with the adventures of Mahit and Three Seagrass. And this novel, the mysterious alien force that sort of haunted the background of a memory called Empire, becomes an ever increasing threat. But nobody can talk to it. The Empire of Teixkalan, they cannot communicate with this unknown entity. And so Mahit and Three Seagrass are recruited to try to speak to this unknown entity and try to reason with it, to try to figure out what it wants and how to get it to stop attacking this local region of space in which Teixkalan has interests. I was thinking of reading it for the upcoming Space Opera September, but I don't know. Oh. Let me answer this real quick. Sorry about this. Okay. Sorry about that. So next up is The Blade Between by Sam J. Miller. This is his follow-up to Blackfish City, although a standalone. It features a young gay man or youngish gay man, who lived in New York City, coming home to take care of his ailing father. And while he does so, he sort of gets reacquainted with his community, including an old boyfriend, and trying to save the city from gentrification and some kind of Lovecraftian and Stephen Kingian monstrosity that seems to haunt the town. And finally, I have two rereads. First up is Middlegame by Seanan McGuire. This is a sort of an alchemy-inspired coming-of-age novel in which an evil alchemist seeks to create God and claim that power for himself, using pairs of twins who have powers. And I read this when it came out in 2019, and I didn't quite like it, but I wanted to give it another go and see what I make of it this time around. Maybe my opinions will improve. And finally, Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. This was another novel that came out in 2019, and I read it, and I like it, but I'm also not entirely sure about it. I want to reread it and have another go at it. This is about a man named Tracker who has the ability to find things, who is recruited along with his on and off again boyfriend and others to find this missing child. And then later, several years later, seeking revenge after what happened to his new family and stuff. And so looking forward to having another go at that. So before I forget, because I did almost forget the history books. So I'm also planning on reading Gailey by Jeremy Atherton Lin, which is a bit of social history and memoir dealing with gay bars. And finally, Gay Life and Culture, A World History, edited by Robert Aldrich, which is a anthology that looks at different periods in gay history that I quite enjoy. I'm looking forward to rereading this one too, because this was a reread too. So that's my probably overly ambitious Pride TBR, and we'll see how exactly everything goes. Again, sorry about the phone call interruption, but I was a little too far in to stop it, and that was a rather important phone call. So anyway, I'll see you in a few hours with weekly reads, where I will also pick which of these I will start with on June 1st. Probably would be Factory Riches of Lowell or Taste of Marrow, or both. So until then, BookTube, thank you. Have a great afternoon and stay safe. And also enjoy your Memorial Day weekend if you are American. So until, well, in a few hours, thank you, BookTube, and stay safe.